tenure of the sixth substantive Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Esimona, ended on the 4th of June. Of course, there won't be any power vacuum. Somebody has to be there while waiting for council to come. And so by 4th of June, only Professor Ikechebelu was the only DVC, because there were supposed to be two deputy vice chancellors, but he was the only one available. There was no deputy vice chancellor academic. He was the deputy vice chancellor admin. So naturally, Senate had no other option than to ask him to oversee the office of the vice chancellor. And that was also in line with the directive from NUC, that somebody should be out of the DVCs asked to oversee the office, pending the coming of council, because it is the prerogative of council to appoint the, because it's a process. Selecting the substantive takes a process. So meanwhile, council can appoint an acting vice chancellor while the process is ongoing. So that was how Ikechebelu, the deputy vice chancellor admin, became the person overseeing the office of the vice chancellor. So if you use the word removed, it doesn't actually, it doesn't sound well. So I think that is the part. But if I show, okay, please.
So, we look at it from the angle of he's been barely 2 months into office, and usually what we see, what is sort of the status quo in like Nigerian situations is that an acting vice chancellor sometimes goes on to become the VC. So we look at all of these things, and then it's why like there's sort of most of the headlines everywhere is that he was removed. But now that you've clarified,
but I can actually make more clarification.
Okay.
Council, when constituted, led by His Excellency Ambassador Greg Mbadiwe, when they came, they met to decide on the modalities for appointing the acting vice chancellor. And of course, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Nnamdi Azikiwe University branch, wrote to them to say that, please, we want you to create a level playing ground for all the contestants. So having one of the contestants on the acting capacity already has given him the edge over every other person. And just like you just said, that you assume that anybody who is in the acting capacity will automatically become the substantive. But it's not automatic. It's just that when you are on the acting capacity, you have all the powers, you have all the things you need to make you get the money and the rest of it, to make you clinch the substantive position. So it's not that it's automatic. So what we've said, let there be some kind of a level playing ground for everybody. And so council, in their wisdom, how do you create such a level playing ground? They said, they get required, because they have the power. It's the council that sets the criteria. They have the power to set the criteria. So one is that the person should be a former deputy vice chancellor, to ensure that the person has, whoever is acting has gotten some experience in university management. And two, that the person should be up 66 to 70. What does that mean? That the person is not qualified, because for you to vie for substantive, you must be 66 and below, 65 and below, I mean to say. So if you're less than 65 or more than 65, you're not qualified to vie for the position. So to ensure that whoever is going to occupy the position of the acting is not qualified to vie for the substantive, they decided that council, Senate should please supply them with the names of 2 persons who fall within that category. And so Senate, of course, it is the duty, Senate need to meet, because there may be many people who are within that category, 66 to 70 within the university, who have served as a deputy vice chancellor. And then they gave Senate a time limit that they are coming on the 20th of July, and Senate should urgently meet and nominate for them the 2 persons out of the many persons if they are. The Vice Chancellor, of course, the person overseeing the office of the Vice Chancellor, who felt that it will be to his disadvantage, decided not to call a meeting or whatever. I don't know what, but by 19th of July, there was no meeting. And so some senators decided on their own, because there is a doctrine of necessity, to call a meeting and looked at the deputy vice chancellors who are qualified, and only 2 of them. There were no more than 2. So it makes the whole job easy, because there was no need for deliberation, there was no need for voting, because there were just 2. If there were more than 2, you would talk about we need to meet, vote, select who should be. But since there were just 2 of them available, and that the 2 persons who were in that category were Professor Carol Arinze-Umeobi and Professor FJC Frederick Odibo. So we simply wrote to council and gave them the names of the 2 persons. And so what happened? They appointed one, because they have the power to appoint. They appointed Carol Umeobi as the acting vice chancellor, while the process of selecting the substantive will soon start. And Ikechebelu, Professor Joseph Ikechebelu, is qualified to vie. So nobody is against anybody, and nobody was removed. So using the word removed may not be the best interest. It's just that some of us felt that Ikechebelu did not follow the directive, because the directive was clear: oversee the office of the vice chancellor before until council comes, that council will appoint. So he probably overdid it. That's the way I will say. And that was what gave the impression that he has already been appointed the acting vice chancellor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for dissecting this matter for us, because the impression most people had was that it was removed. But now that you've explained all of the connecting factors here, I think we have better knowledge. So you are saying that Professor Ikechebelu still has the right to vie for the position. He could still be reinstated. He could still become a vice chancellor. That's what you're saying, Prof.
Of course, he has the right. He's qualified. He has very good chances of being selected the substantive vice chancellor. And I want to tell you that because people were, like the university was a bit divided, those who were in support of him and those who felt that the right thing should be done. I belong to those who felt that the right thing should be done. And because if we did not do what we did, it would have been a different story, because there was already a power play, I mean, between the person who was overseeing the office and the council that has the power to appoint. And we don't want it to degenerate into a situation where council can recommend to the visitor, the president, to appoint a sole administrator, because that would be the next step. If the person refused to, and maybe Senate, all the Senate is back him up, all the members of Senate back up his claim and say, no, council cannot direct us on what to do and all. The only thing they can do, they have the power to recommend a sole administrator for the university. It happened at the UNN some years back when Professor Gonwork was appointed. It was as a result of this kind of crisis. So we felt that we have the council, whether right or wrong, have the right, they have the legal backing to decide on who should be appointed and who should not be appointed. I mean, who is qualified to be appointed, not a particular person, but who should be. And there was a letter from NUC during the heat of this crisis that the council should not dictate to Senate the criteria. And I looked at it, I laughed, I said, oh, they should not talk about age, they should not talk about origin, gender. Of course, nobody will talk about origin. No sensible person will say your state of origin or your gender. But age, definitely. And then they say ETC. In other words, nobody should talk about any criteria whatsoever. And it's laughable, because it means that if Senate decides to appoint an assistant lecturer or to nominate 2 assistant lecturers who have barely been in the university for 2 years or 3 years and send it to council, that council is obliged to appoint them acting vice chancellor. Then it makes no sense. In other words, you're saying that council has no authority anymore. In other words, whoever is recommended to them, they will appoint. So they're like just a rubber stamp. Whatever you send to us, we appoint. Meanwhile, they are the ones who have the authority to appoint. So how can you tell them that you must, whoever they recommend to you, anybody that has a power to appoint, Senate power is to recommend. Your power is to appoint. The appointing power, the person that has the power to appoint can still direct you on what the kind of recommendation they want. You can't just say you recommend anybody and you must appoint the person. Then otherwise, then you are down more. You can say that you are now superior. Senate is now superior to governing council if that is the law. Because if the Senate says this is who we want, and governing council must accept it by law, it means that Senate has their power supersedes that of the governing council. But governing council said no. We have the criteria we set. The criteria was not set targeting at anybody. This is the criteria, and the criteria are just and fair. In other words, we want to make sure that if you're vying for the position, you are not, you should not be the acting. And that is it. Some people are citing examples of, the people have been there on acting capacity and eventually made it. Yeah, it has happened in the past, but that doesn't make it that is right, and it must be. It's not the law. That it has happened does not make it the law. They have the power, the fact that the Senate, the council has the power to determine the criteria they need for fairness and justice to all.
Yeah.
In other words, council is seen as being fair. That's the way I look at it.
Prof, I want to ask you, for those who there's some kind of tension brewing in the university community. Do you think that there are actually people who are pro Professor Ikechebelu and those who are pro the council? Do you see any sort of tension brewing within the university community?
Oh, of course, there are in every situation personal interest. People have all kinds of personal interests.
Yeah.
They feel that if Ikechebelu is there to favor me more and all that. So those who don't want to look at the reasoning or anything, who feel that there is something they need to gain from his acting vice chancellorship or whatever, and so there will be tension. There will be so people like us who don't have any interest. Personally, I don't have any interest whatsoever. The only thing is that I feel that council is right and just in their demands or what they set out criteria. And so that's why I support that. Otherwise, I don't even know those who are also interested in the position. But at least Ikechebelu is a friend of mine, so I have nothing against him. And so I don't see why there is tension somehow, but already people have come to realize that council has the power to do what they did. And so many people who were against him or who were against have seen that they have no option than to obey. Otherwise, there will be anarchy.
Yeah. Are there any implications of this tension? Do you see any implications? What are the implications of the whole situation? The implications of these appointments of a new VC? Are there going to be any implications on the larger university community?
Okay, if you're talking about implication for the fact that there is another person occupying the position now,
yes,
yeah, there won't be any implication. The process of appointment of the substantive vice chancellor will soon start, and whoever that is qualified will apply, and the process will take its course. So I don't see any implication. There were agitations. Some people who were discontent were making some, if I may call it, noise and feeling that it shouldn't be. But they have come to realize that there is nothing they can do about it because the body that did it were empowered by law to do what they did. So whether right or wrong, if you feel aggrieved, I think you seek redress in the court, but I don't see anything, nobody should, I don't see any grievance on any part, because what was done was seen as just and seen as the right thing for the university, for peace to reign. That's what will bring peace, because of course, there may be other contestants who felt cheated. I mean, with this situation now, they don't have any hope. But now everybody is hopeful. I mean, they will be contestants are now hopeful that they can still make it. But with their contender being in the seat, applying will be like, okay, to fulfill all righteousness, let me put an application. But now there is a renewed hope that you can apply and you may get it. That is the joy, the renewed joy in the system. There is nothing wrong with the Ikechebelu. I mean, the 2 months he acted, he did well. He didn't do badly. And so, but it's just that we have to follow due process. Because that's my own, because others were talking about due process was not followed. That, to me, that is the due process that was followed. And what did they refer to as due process not being followed? Because only 35 senators wrote to cancel. Only 35 senators wrote to cancel. But the issue is that in this situation where what we call doctrine of necessity, there was nothing else anybody could do, because the person who ought to convene the normal Senate is at the center of it. So he wouldn't want to call a Senate that will remove him, or that will say something that will obey council directive. So he was delaying in convening that Senate. So the few senators felt that there was no need, and good enough, only 2 candidates were available. So there was no need for debate. Because if there were more than 2, they would have said, how did you arrive at the 2? I mean, you need to discuss, even vote, before you can come up with the 2. But good enough, only 2 persons were there. And so their names were given to council. And they simply had to choose one out of the 2 in line with the directive.
Well, thank you very much for that take, Prof. Thank you for, because we've read on social media, he's been removed. There's all over social media, people are writing, there's a power play. It sort of looked like there was a power play between the chairman of the governing council, talking about Ambassador Nnamdi, and Professor Ikechebelu. But it still looks like there's a power play. But can you hear and now tell us what is the standard process of? I know you've laid it out, but like in any VC, the NUC, is there a standard protocol for like selecting VCs? You know, there are 2 candidates right now. There are 2 candidates that have been appointed, and you said Professor Ikechebelu still has like the chance to vie. So is this, you said it's still based on appointments. How does this process work generally in any university, not just in Nnamdi Azikiwe University?
Okay, yeah, the process is it takes some time. The process starts from council meeting to advertise. I mean, they will sit to advertise and bring out the criteria. That's why you see that it's not the same for all the federal universities. Sometimes you say that the person should have must have been a professor for 10 years. Some universities will say must have been a professor for 5 years, 8 years, and things like that. So you see that it's actually the council of the particular university that will set these criteria. So when council meet, they will set out the criteria and advertise in 2 national dailies. And of course, we'll give at least 6 weeks for applicants to send in their applications. And so at the end of 6 weeks, of course, within that period, they also set up what they call a search team. The search team is meant to look out for people who they feel is qualified, but may not, for some reasons, not apply. So in other words, going out to look for such people and urge them to apply. So there will be a search team that will go out to look for people who did not apply on their own to put in the application. Why are they doing all this? To ensure, to make sure that the best will eventually emerge. So that is the stage of application. Then after that, the Senate, there will be what we call a joint council Senate committee. 2 persons will be elected by Senate to join a council committee, what they call the selection committee, that will shortlist the candidates and interview them. So this joint council Senate committee will look at the applications in line with the criteria and then interview. I mean, the shortlisting, of course, you know the process of selecting somebody. It has to go with shortlisting, stages of shortlisting, reduce a whole number to 5, interview them, or to 6, then invite them for interview. After the interview, you now reduce the number to 3. So these 3 names will be forwarded to council, and council will appoint 1 person out of the 3. Of course, you send the names with the scores. So you have first, second, and third to council, and council will appoint and then inform the visitor. You remember before now, the council will send the names of the visitor who will appoint 1. But now council has the right to appoint 1 out of the 3 and just inform the visitor. So that is the procedure. And the procedure I've given you is for the appointment of the substantive vice chancellor. For the acting, like I told you, council has the right to also appoint somebody on acting capacity, pending the coming of but the rule says that person, whoever they want to appoint, should be on the recommendation of Senate. And whatever the case may be, there must be some set out criteria by whoever that is appointing. If I want you to recommend for me somebody to appoint, I will tell you what I want, the criteria I want. I won't just say, give me anybody. Otherwise, you keep sending names, I keep rejecting them. You can send me 10 names and I'll say no. So I'll tell you what I want. I want you, the person should be so, should have this, so that. Then go and choose, look for the person and bring to me and I will appoint. So that's exactly what council did. They set out the criteria they want Senate to look at and give them the 2 names. And Senate was reluctant to do that, and we did it on their behalf.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Greg Obiamalu, Professor of Linguistics and immediate past Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Nnamdi Azikiwe University. We've been having the conversation around the recent events of the appointment of a new Vice Chancellor for the Nnamdi Azikiwe University, talking about the appointment of Professor Carol Umobi. Thank you very much for joining us, Prof, and we hope to have you next time in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Have a nice day and good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Yeah.